The year was 1822, and a cowboy of 31 years old rode the rugged trails near the foothills after a summer storm. The desert sky still grumbled with distant thunder, and the riverbeds swelled with angry water. He was searching for strays from his small herd when he heard a cry, faint but urgent, carried over the roaring flood. He spurred his horse toward the sound, cresting a ridge to see two young Apache sisters, both just 22, clinging to a jagged boulder as the rushing torrent threatened to sweep them away. The sight froze him for a heartbeat. Two women, dark, braids plastered with rain, their dresses torn by the force of water, clung desperately, their eyes wide with terror. The current surged higher with each passing second. Without hesitation, he dismounted, tied a rope around his waist, and lashed the other end to a cedar tree. His horse whinnied nervously, sensing the danger. The cowboy drew a deep breath and plunged into the furious current toward them. The icy water slammed against him, dragging with merciless force, but his muscles strained against the rope as he fought his way across. One sister screamed as her grip slipped, but he caught her arm in time, dragging her back to the rock. He shouted over the roar of the flood, urging them to hold on. With desperate effort, he looped the rope around the first sister's waist and hauled her inch by inch towards safety. Exhaustion burned in his chest, but he refused to let go. When the first sister reached dry ground, she collapsed in sobs, her hands raw from gripping the stone. The cowboy turned back, lungs heaving, to rescue the second. Her strength was fading, her lips trembling with cold, her dark eyes fixed on him with both fear and something unspoken. He wrapped the rope around her and braced his legs against the current, pulling with every ounce of power left. The flood fought him, but at last he dragged her free, collapsing with her on the muddy bank. For long moments they lay gasping, water streaming from their clothes. The storm clouds rolled away, leaving only the golden blaze of sunset over the canyon. The sisters clung to each other, whispering in their own tongue, before turning tearful eyes toward him. He said nothing, only nodded, his chest rising and falling as the weight of what had nearly been lost sank in. He had not planned to be anyone's savior that day, yet fate had chosen otherwise. By the time they reached the shelter of his camp, night had fallen. The cowboy lit a fire, its glow casting flickering shadows across their faces. He gave them blankets, brewed coffee, and handed them strips of dried venison from his pack. The sisters sat close together, their hair still dripping, their hands trembling as they ate. He kept his distance, speaking little, his eyes watchful. In his world, kindness was often mistaken for weakness, yet tonight, silence felt heavier than words. The younger of the two watched him carefully, studying the lines of weariness etched into his face. He was not like the men she had known. No arrogance, no hunger in his gaze, only a quiet strength. She leaned toward her sister, whispering something he could not hear, and both smiled faintly, despite their ordeal. He caught the exchange, but pretended not to notice, focusing instead on drying his revolver near the flames. Trust was fragile, and he would not push for more than it could bear. Morning broke crisp and clear, the floodwaters receding to leave behind broken branches and scattered debris. The cowboy saddled his horse, preparing to lead them towards safer ground. Yet before they left, one of the sisters, her eyes softer now, her voice low, stepped closer to him. She placed her hand lightly on his arm, hesitant but deliberate. "You saved us," she said in halting English, her words heavy with meaning. "Sister and I owe you everything." He simply tipped his hat, murmuring, "No debt between us. Just glad you're breathing." They journeyed together through the hills, the sisters walking beside his horse. By midday, they reached the outskirts of their people's land. A small hunting party spotted them and rushed forward, weapons raised, until the sisters cried out. Relief washed over the men's faces as they embraced the women, listening to their hurried words. The warrior's eyes turned toward the cowboy, sharp and measuring, but no hostility followed. One elder nodded solemnly, a gesture of gratitude that required no translation. For days afterward, he lingered near the river's edge, tending his herd and mending gear. Yet his thoughts kept circling back to the two young women. He had seen something in their eyes, a flicker of strength and vulnerability, of survival tempered with gratitude. On the third night, as stars spread across the sky like scattered silver, he heard soft footsteps approach his camp. It was one of the sisters, her face lit faintly by firelight. She stood silent for a long time before speaking. Her voice trembled, but her eyes held steady as she whispered, "I belong to you." The words struck him harder than any storm. He stared at her, stunned, unable to reply. She spoke again, softer still. "You risked your life. Our mother says such a man is chosen by the spirits. I do not give you thanks. I give you me." She stepped closer, her hand hovering uncertainly before resting on his chest. He felt his heartbeat thunder beneath her touch. For the first time in years, the cowboy felt something he had buried deep, a yearning not just for survival but for belonging. He shook his head slowly, his voice hoarse. "I didn't save you for this." But her eyes only deepened, unwavering, filled with something beyond gratitude. She whispered, "The flood tried to take me. You gave me back my life. It is not mine anymore. It is yours." The fire crackled between them, the night wrapping their secret vow in silence. The days that followed blurred into something new. He remained near the tribe, no longer just a wanderer passing through. Though he kept to himself, the people grew, accustomed to his presence, watching as the sisters visited him often, bringing food or simply sitting near his fire. Whispers stirred among the elders, but no anger followed. The spirits had chosen their path. The cowboy, once alone against the world, found himself tethered to something he had never imagined: family, trust, and love born from survival. But the West was not a place where peace lasted long. One evening, as the sun sank blood-red behind the cliffs, riders approached, bounty hunters rough and cruel. They had followed rumors of two young women and the man who had taken them. Steel glinted, voices shouted, and the cowboy knew he could not run. With rifle in hand, he stood his ground. The sisters refused to hide, one gripping his arm, the other lifting a spear. Together, they faced the storm of violence that threatened to tear them apart. The battle was fierce, dust and gunfire choking the air, but the cowboy fought with the fury of a man who finally had something worth dying for. The sisters fought beside him, swift and unyielding, their bond unbroken. When silence fell at last, the earth was littered with bodies, and the sky glowed with embers of twilight. Bloodied, but alive, they leaned against one another, a circle unbroken by death. In that moment, the cowboy realized the truth. He had not saved them. They had saved him too. As the seasons turned, the story of the cowboy and the two sisters spread quietly across the desert. Some called it fate, others spoke of spirits guiding human hearts. But for him, it was simple. He had set out to chase stray cattle and instead found the family he never knew he needed. What began in flood and fire had turned into a bond written in the dust of the Wild West. The cowboy who once lived for himself now carried two lives within his own, bound by love, loyalty, and destiny.